Welcome everyone to our Safe and Sound virtual speaker series this week. We're so glad that you joined us today. We are on day 5, the final day of our week of presentations. This Safe and Sound Week is an event that was sponsored by OSHA. It's held each August and it recognizes the successes of workplace health and safety programs and offers information and ideas on how to keep America's workers safe. Today we'll be discussing safety in entertainment rigging with entertainment industry experts Brian Leister and Nick Fleming. Today you will learn what every stagehand should have in their kits, gain an understanding of the evolving safety culture and the importance of training and certification, and walk away knowing the most important people to make friends with that you never may have thought about. Before we begin, there's just a few things we'd like to cover. First off, today's sessions will be recorded and they'll be posted on our website on a blog page. We'll be sending everybody a link to each of the sessions from the whole week, including today's, so you can view the recording at your leisure. Secondly, everyone is in listen-only mode, so we encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A pane. There's a little arrow in the top right. If you click on it, it'll open up to a box and you can type away in your questions. Our session today is about 1 hour. We're going to be talking for about 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll be following up with your questions after that. So now for a little background on our speakers. Brian Leister is an industry product trainer who specializes in entertainment and is located at our Rock Lidditz training facility in Lidditz, Pennsylvania. He specializes in entertainment rigging, rope access, and hoist maintenance. Brian is an ETCP certified rigger arena and an ETCP recognized trainer. He's also a SPRAT 3 and a RADA 3 certified rope access technician. Alongside Brian Leister, we have Nick Fleming. Nick is a business development specialist for our CM Entertainment division. He joined Columbus McKinnon in 2017, has been contributing to the entertainment industry for more than 10 years. He has an extensive background in sales, operations, marketing, managing large rigging departments, all the way down to small rigging service teams. So before we begin, there's just a few things we'd like to cover. As I said, the session is being recorded and everyone who's registered will receive a link. Everyone is in listen-only mode, as I said. And lastly, if we don't get your questions answered, be sure to consider joining our CM Riggers Forum. This is a Facebook group we have. You can go to CM Riggers Forum on Facebook, request to get access. You'll answer a few questions. And right now we have about, I think, 1,500 members to date. There you can access Brian Leister directly and join others in the group. We share content on an ongoing basis there as well. So definitely take a look. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and get started today. Personal protective equipment, what every stagehand should have in their kit. So let's get started. What are some of the staple PPE equipment, so personal protective equipment, that you have on the job or should have on the job as an entertainment rigger, Brian?
Well, these days we know that the PPE that, I think PPE is one of those things that a lot of people not in the industry or not even in the industrial sector would have been like, what's that mean? But I think nowadays everybody knows what PPE means. But when it comes to entertainment rigging, some of the key things that I make sure that I have with me on every gig are going to be the right shoes. All right, just like if you're going on a hike or something, you got to have the right shoes. Eye protection. You don't know what kind of work you're going to be doing, but anytime you're dealing with tools and other materials, working at height especially, you should have some kind of eye protection in
there. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Anything specific? What about, sorry, go ahead.
After you, Gisela.
Okay, so starting with eyes, what about gloves? Do you have any
what is that?
What about gloves?
Gloves. Yeah, you should always have a pair of gloves. I have 2 different types of gloves that I usually have. I'll have gloves for rope access type work, right, with more dexterity but less padding. And then I'll have thicker, like, work gloves that I'm going to use to protect my fingers and my skin from abrasion or impacts, stuff like that.
Yeah, I know. Coming from, I wasn't very much of a hands-on rigger. I always more led teams. But I know part of our crew would always come back and say, hey, you know, I need more dexterity with my gloves, and our company regulations just wouldn't allow it. No, if you're going to perform this task, you have to have these certain type of gloves. So that was a constant conversation in my former roles of how do we get our technicians to be able to do the job appropriately but still wear the proper PPE. And really, you know, I started with thinking, oh, how do I change these regulations so that the PPE works for me? But in reality, the route I ended up taking was, how do I really change the tools that my guys are working with so that the PPE, so that it conforms to the PPE. So, you know, the question always starts as, oh, this PPE is a hindrance to me and I can't get my job done. But really, in reality, you take a step back and you start focusing on the tools that you're actually using. Maybe there's a different tool or a different way of approaching it that the PPE would fall into. So.
Okay. Yeah, and what are your favorite kind of gloves, Brian? I mean, do you have a certain type?
Well, without, you know, throwing out any kind of brand recognition there, because no one's paying me to be a sponsor, there's a couple of pretty popular type brands out there, but I like Rope Tech type gloves because they're very breathable. So like the back of your hand is going to be very breathable, but the palms and fingertips are protected. A lot of people like the type of gloves. I know they're made in the UK and you can buy them here in the States too. So without giving away their name, some of our people out there in the audience probably know what I'm talking about. They're a really well-made pair of gloves. They are a bit on the higher end side, but you know, you get what you pay for, but they have removable fingertips. So you can have the fingertips on there or you can pop them off when you need that extra dexterity. It's really just like these three fingers that you need that, you know, sensitive touch for. Otherwise, you want the rest of your hand protected and stuff like that.
You know, it's amazing how the gloves and PPE have transformed over the years. You know, going back to my original example of trying to change my tools to conform to the PPE. PPE has now kind of conformed to using the tools. You know, you mentioned using rope access and having padding in the certain spots that the rope would go. You know, you're having fingerless gloves that can turn into finger gloves. You know, it's amazing how PPE is conformed that there's so many different options depending on the job that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that you should look for in a pair of gloves is and most of them have them these days, but a loop that you can put a carabiner into. Right. So if you got a pair of gloves that it's really easy to slap a carabiner in there and put them on your belt or your, you know, something like that, you're not going to risk when you go to take them out of your pouch or your pockets or wherever you're keeping them, you're not going to risk them just falling off and you know, you're taking them out because you need them and then you lost them. So that's going to, you know, make your day a little bit more frustrating.
Okay. Well, let's shift gears to look at footwear. What are some of your recommendations for footwear?
Well, the PPE policies for different companies and authorities that have jurisdiction over the work that we do are getting a lot more aligned with things that we see in construction and industry. So, you know, the days of wearing like your regular sneakers or tennis shoe type thing isn't as common anymore. People are going to want to see you wearing some kind of protective footwear. When it comes to electrical hazards, you've got two options, right? You can't have both. You can have one or the other. You can either have, you know, protection from shocks and stuff, or you can have protection from static buildup, right? Insulated or static protection. And in the, I would say, like working ballrooms where you're walking across carpet all day long, it's probably a good idea to have those static protected shoes because you build up a lot of static electricity. And I remember being in a scissor lift in a ballroom after walking around, you know, and the lift builds up some static too. And then knowing I'm about to touch the metal beam or the point on the ceiling and knowing I'm going to get that little static zap that we all get. Anticipating that was always, you know, you just had to close your eyes and reach out and touch it. But if you're wearing statically protected shoes, that can help, you know, protect from that. But also if we're working on sensitive electronic components, you want that, you know, that prevention of static buildup. Now, let's change environments, look at working outdoors in an environment where there's a lot of water possibility or rain. That's where we're going to want those insulated shoes so that we're not, you know, conductive and getting, you know, electricity to our bodies if we happen to step in a puddle with, you know, something electrified. Other than electric, you know, like the restaurant industry, we want non-slip. You know, we want something with non-slip. We want something that protects the toes either composite or steel toe. I think they even make aluminum toe protectors now, which are more lightweight. So those are options that you want as well. But I'd say overall, you want something comfortable, right? Your entertainment people are on their feet for, it's very seldom 8 hours. It's usually 8, 12, 16, maybe more hours. So you want shoes that are very, very comfortable and always pack. You asked what do I keep in my bag? I keep 2 extra pairs of socks in my bag at all times, among many other things, but always 2 extra pairs of socks.
So Brian, you rattled off a lot there. So, leaning on your entertainment rigging experience, what would be the minimum PPE for shoes that you'd want? Are you going with soft or hard sole, soft sole, toe protection? What, there was a lot of shoes mentioned in there from an entertainment rigging perspective. What do you think would be the best option?
Well, for all around, like my typical work shoe or work boot rather, is going to have toe protection at a minimum. Now, I prefer a composite toe, but you got to protect things, falling down on your feet, on your toes. So there's one, that's bare minimum. Second's going to be insulated, right? I've learned to adapt to that static shock thing. I'd rather not be, shocked by actual current. So insulation. Beyond that, I'm going to say a really good shank in the shoe. That's not necessarily protective, but it definitely helps when you're having to climb. And last, I never wear shoes that are below my ankle when I'm doing rigging work. I always have something that covers the ankle because most of your road cases, the casters, like that big, so they're just above ankle height. And what happens is a box rolls into your leg, and if you've got a boot that goes above the ankle, that's much better protection. Because I have had a road case hit me in the ankle before, and I was limping around all day in pain, and learned my lesson from that.
No,
But when it comes to PPE, like actual ratings for PPE, you do want to make sure you're buying from a store that specializes in that sort of thing, and you want to look on the tongue of the shoe and look for some kind of rating on there. It might be a ASTM or an ASSE type of acronym on there that denotes that it is going to be compliant to a recognized industry standard for PPE.
Yeah, I think your tip of making sure it's a comfortable shoe is uber important. There's nothing worse than sitting out there doing the happy dance because your feet hurt so much. And going back to the gloves for a second, same thing with the shoes. I'm amazed on hard soled steel toe shoes that look like tennis shoes now. Things are so much more comfortable than they ever have been. There's almost no excuse.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, okay, so we covered eyes, we've covered hands, we've covered feet. What about the head? Like helmet.
The head's a good one. I think you definitely want one that's got the Z89 protection to it. But in the entertainment industry, and I think the older styles are phasing out, and the newer styles with the chin straps are all phasing in. But being that, especially entertainment riggers, they all work overhead. A, meet that anything that meets the Z89 standard, but B, something with the chin strap on it as well. But I'm sure Brian will touch on a little more about depending on the work environment that you're doing, you may need a face mask, you may need hearing protection that all have attachments for those helmets as well. But I think overall the main points would be Z89 and a chin strap to keep it secured.
Absolutely. You want to make sure that, if it's something protective, it's going to meet a rating of some kind, right? And it's going to have an industry standard on there. When I first started professionally in the entertainment industry back in 2002, nobody was wearing helmets, at least on the jobs I was on. It really didn't become a thing until a little bit later. And even now, I still have gone out, or I've gotten pictures from, from social media, stuff like that, of entertainment load-ins, load-outs, and every time now I see people not wearing helmets, I'm like, what's going on? Who's in charge of that? A lot of us were resistant at first because everybody resists change, but nowadays the culture of safety in our industry has changed. It's evolved.
Yeah.
And nowadays it is an expectation. If there's work going on above head, you're wearing a helmet. If you're working at height, you're wearing a helmet. And like Nick said, that helmet should have a chin strap, and it should be compliant to some kind of standard. So, I'll try to keep logos out of the thing here, because like I said, no one's paying me for a brand advertisement. But what I have right here is a helmet that I tend to wear quite often. This is my rope access helmet, but it's also great for work at height in general. Some of the things that I have on here, I have reflective stickers, right? So in entertainment, we typically wear a lot of black. So this, of course, comes in black too. So with that black helmet, if you have a couple reflective stickers on there, they have to be approved by the manufacturer. But it does help. So it blends in, but if a light, if someone's shining flashlights around, it'll hit that and, kind of give away your position so that people know you're up there doing something. This particular type of helmet is vented, okay? And that's something that we need to be aware of when we're choosing a helmet. This is great ventilation if you're wearing this helmet all day, especially if you're working outdoors, you want some airflow in there to keep you cool. But what we have to keep in mind is any helmet like this that's vented, it's gonna have a different classification on the inside. So when you get your helmet, you wanna take a look on the interior of it, and you're gonna look for different standard designations and stuff like that. So this one is gonna have a letter C in there. And what C means for helmets is conductive, okay? That doesn't mean that the shell or anything is conductive. What it means is that if you're doing electrical work, the area in which this helmet is designed to protect you is not rated for electrical work, because these little vent holes, right, even if they're closed, it doesn't guarantee they'll stay closed. Over time, it could get loose and open a little bit. So a spark or stray wire could go through there and give you a singe or a shock or something like that. So type C is conductive. Otherwise, if it says E instead of C, that means electrical. So that would be a helmet you can use if you're doing some kind of electrical work as well. But the great thing about these kind of helmets, there's a lot of great manufacturers out there, very popular, is the manufacturers are designing these helmets to accommodate additional PPE. So for instance, I can outfit that helmet with a visor. Right? And
nice.
This is a visor with compliance, so it's Z87 Plus right there, and it snaps right into the side of the helmet. If I'm working outdoors and I need eye protection, I've got a shaded visor as well. So there's a lot of options there. And then nowadays, one of the things that I've included on my helmet setup is a face shield. All right, so this helps with the current climate of PPE mitigations we have to accommodate for, but it also has areas for ear protection, headlamp, all sorts of stuff with this helmet. But touching on what Nick said again, chin strap, very important. And when it comes to your PPE, you can't just assume that it's in good shape. You have to do an inspection before you use it. And most, if not all, manufacturers are going to require you to do what's called a periodic inspection, or if you're in the UK, across the pond there, it's called a thorough examination by a competent person. And that's going to be a documented inspection. You're going to want to do that either every 6 months, according to UK standards and EU standards, or California standards. And then everywhere else, it's usually a year is the typical amount of time.
I just want to
I feel like I know everything about a helmet now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And we know what your preferences are and all the considerations you've made. Something that you brought up a minute ago was really nice, because you tied into a message we had on Monday about that we asked Rob Bruno, is how do you get safety to be a part of the culture? And you said in the past it wasn't part of the entertainment culture in the entertainment community to wear helmets and have chin straps. But and this is a topic for another day, but it's good to hear that things have changed and it's becoming a part of it. People are accepting it, because it's a very hard topic, is how do you change the culture of any industry or even company to make people, to encourage them to want to be safer. So that's great that you brought that up. But,
and like you said, that is a topic for another day, but I would like to talk about two things about that. There are two ways that this culture changes, that becomes safer. One of them is not so great. It's when there's accidents, when there's losses, right? When people get injured or when we lose lives. That changes things pretty quickly. The other way to change the culture is training, right? The more training that we get, things like that, the more education there is, the safer we'll operate and the more willing we'll be to incorporate those changes.
Yeah, and I'll throw in documentation as well. Writing standards, things like that is definitely a way to help improve as well.
Yeah, we've touched on a bunch of those, but that's such a good reminder of the training, because if people, they don't know what they don't know. So if they train, they're equipped,
Exactly.
they're visible, they can catch
Right.
things, stop things from happening. Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you for going over all the detail on the helmet. Okay, so now I know this is something near and dear to your heart, the harness, protecting the
Oh,
body. Yeah, let's
Oh
talk about the
man,
harness.
how much time do we got, Gisela?
Well, we're at
I've got all day.
12:20. We
I
have a
think Nick
couple more
doesn't
to
get to
go,
train
so.
at 3:30, but I've got all day. I can just stay on.
Okay. Well, yeah, go ahead and touch on the harness. I have it, so let's talk about the harness.
Well, there's when it comes to PPE, there's stuff that you can share that's communal, things like that. But things that are personal would be your gloves, shoes. Of course, we're not sharing shoes. Helmets, I tend to want to have my own helmet and harness because this work is not like usually in air conditioned environments, and we're sweating, we're crawling around, we're getting dirty. So your harness is a personal thing. So I've got one of mine here. This is a rope access harness. So when you're choosing your harness, you got to understand what kind of work at height you're going to be doing. And if it's going to be just simple fall restraint or travel restraint or fall arrest, you might get away with a much lighter, simpler harness. But if you're going to be doing any kind of positioning or suspension work, you need a harness that's designed for suspension. All right, and that's what this one is. It's just a few grams heavier than your usual harness, but it's got padding pretty much on every contact point for the body. And the key thing about harnesses like this are most manufacturers these days, when they stitch these pieces, they're going to use a different color than the webbing on the harness in most cases. So when you do your inspection, this stands out. Any contrasting colored stitching is going to be indication that it's structural, it's safety related, it's critical. So definitely you need to take a look at that. And then any metal on metal contact and any metal on textile contact. So anywhere this material goes through the buckles, things like that, those are wear points. So it takes a while to get your harness adjusted to your preference and your body type. But and some people from time to time, they're not likely to want to back those buckles off and find that sweet spot again. But it's really important that we actually push that webbing back through and inspect the area that was in compression so that we can make sure it's intact and in good shape.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know, Brian, this is near and dear to you. You teach this, for a living, so I won't steal your thunder. But I think overall, that's one of the harnesses are one thing that I think is kind of neglected in the industry. I think prior to our time at CM, going on the job sites and just seeing how poorly harnesses are treated, and you can definitely tell that the inspection of these harnesses and retiring of these harnesses aren't really taken as serious as I think they probably should. So we talk about ways to keep improving. I think that's one thing to keep harping on is the fact that the inspection needs to happen. I'll let you kind of go over, the 5 or 6 points of the inspection process for the harness, but I definitely feel like that's something that I understand it hurts the pocketbooks, especially if it's a brand new harness and you're in it on the first day, but it's something that has to be taken serious because it's so critical.
Absolutely. The inspection of harnesses is going to be based on manufacturer. So most manufacturers also have a maximum use life or shelf life of the harness. So, and that's typically going to be 10 years. That means that if that harness sat on a shelf or sat in your closet or wherever for 9 years, 364 days, you get one more day to use it, even if it's in brand new condition, right? Because the manufacturer says after 10 years, you can't use it. Now, these days, there are several manufacturers out there that actually don't have that rule. They allow for use of the equipment indefinitely, as long as it passes inspection and the inspection records are kept in good standing. So when you're shopping for a harness, when you're trying to select what harness is right for you, that could play a pretty critical role, especially if you're not doing the kind of work where your harness is really going to get used and abused a really bad way. Like you're using it in lifts, you're not crawling around through, beams and things like that. And you want to be able to have that harness for a very, very long time. That could be a critical thing to look at when you're selecting which manufacturer to go with.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, let's keep moving on the list of what's in your toolbox. What about tool tethers? What can you say about those?
That's a really important thing. There's actually a new ANSI standard out there, and I don't want to give too much away because I'm actually developing an e-learning and an in-person class on dropped object prevention. And we're going to be rolling that out sometime this year. And that's all about, first of all, people working at height. Anything that you can drop needs to be tied off. It needs to have a tether to it. Now, in the old days, when I first started, it was either, hey, everybody, no one stand under here because someone's working on something and they might drop something, right? And that might have been good enough then, but it's not really good enough now. There's no excuse for that unless there's absolutely no way to secure that object or tool. But nowadays, we have actual like manufactured equipment. So just like fall protection, where we have manufacturers that design and manufacture specific equipment meant for specific applications in fall protection, we have the same for tool tethers. So instead of getting some string or some tie line or sash cord or whatever and tying your knots and everything, there's actual equipment that's rated and designed and approved for that use. And that's the way that we should be moving forward, is using that appropriate equipment.
Okay.
It's pretty cool that we've gotten to the point that tethering tools have its own manufacturing process now, where before it was, as you said, parachute cord and electrical tape, right? You tied it around your screwdriver or whatever, and
That's what I did in my first couple of years. Yeah.
It's fun. It's exciting to see. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's great to see. Okay, and then the last thing in your toolkit, personal first aid. So what does that look like?
Right. It takes a lot of different forms and shapes. You know, those little mints that you see in the grocery store aisle, little tin kind of can. That is the kind of first aid kit that I'll have in my pocket all the time. I did upgrade. I got myself a nice little watertight case.
Right.
But besides regular PPE that you'll find on a list, even though every job site should have a first aid kit available to you, if you're 80, 120 feet up on a beam and you're pulling points and you grab something and you get your hand cut or something like that, now you're bleeding. So it's one thing, it's bad enough that you're bleeding, right? You might have to get a tetanus shot, who knows? But it's bad enough that, you know, you've injured yourself slightly. You might be able to continue working. We want to prevent any kind of infection, bacterial or otherwise, for that cut. But one of the other things that we have to think about is that we still might have to be doing a job. We might have equipment in our hands. We can't just, you know, leave behind or whatever. So when we're bleeding, we're slippery, right? But the risk of dropping things or not being able to navigate a structure because your hand is all slippery with blood, that can play an important role on either, you know, egress, getting out of that work at height scenario, or finishing the task that you had to do before getting back down. So I always keep a small first aid kit. On my harness, I have a pouch that is mounted on the back of my harness, like the back belt area. And that's where I keep this. So in there, I've got, you know, some pain relievers, some antacids, because I'm over 40 now, I get heartburn from drinking water. So I keep some antacids in there, medications that I might need. I've got tweezers for pulling those splinters out that you get from pretty much anything you touch, metal shavings, wood, right. Nice pairs of little tweezers, antiseptic wipes, and then to make sure it doesn't get too bulky, I basically have 2 of each common type of Band-Aid, you know, your knuckle Band-Aid, your fingertip Band-Aid, things like that. But when it comes to Band-Aids and such, what we typically do in the entertainment industry is gaff tape or electrical tape. So I don't really keep medical tape in here. I just keep maybe a few pieces of gauze, because I'll usually have tape somewhere nearby, and I'll be able to just, you know, tape something up if I really have to. But it's not a big complex kit there, you know, just a few things, maybe some sunscreen, a couple little packets of sunscreen, and maybe insect repellent, that sort of thing.
Excellent. I love it.
Yeah, having a small miniature first aid kit on hand at all times is going to save you time, frustration, and could even prevent accidents.
Yeah, I think that gets overlooked a lot. You know, everybody thinks about the job they're doing, but they don't really give too much concern to the environment that they're doing it in, right? So Brian mentioned sunscreen and bug spray, but you know, maybe that's not on your persons and your personal kit, but that's definitely part of the backpack that you bring to the job site with you. You know, so you don't know what you're going to run into. You know, a wasp nest or something like that. You know, so
yeah, I can imagine. You can only think about all the situations you could be facing. I mean,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And those are really great things. All
Two
right.
other pieces of equipment I just want to breeze through real quick. On my helmet, I usually also have something like this, right? Emergency contact stuff. So if I'm incapacitated, someone can pull that tab that can list allergies, emergency contacts, things like that, and an electrical tester. So some compact little kind of electrical tester to make sure that an outlet isn't live. Those are some kind of peripheral pieces of equipment that I think help increase safety.
Yeah, okay, excellent. So now it's 12:30, so we took the half hour, we covered a lot. Again, what Brian puts in that toolbox, what's in his toolbox that every entertainment rigger should have. Now
well,
we're
that's just one pouch in my bag though.
No, that was very helpful, very interesting. I'm still thinking about the helmet and all the points you brought up about that. I never would have even thought about. So thank you, Brian. Thank you, Nick. All right, now one of the things you brought up when you were thinking about topics for today is also the people. Like, who are the people that you really need to befriend when you are at a job site and you're doing something? Because this is something it sounds like a lot of riggers overlook, the importance of building relationships with certain people. So tell us what that looks like.
Well, this doesn't just apply to riggers. It really applies to anybody who's working in an environment that's not familiar to them. You know, this could be any kind of building that you're working in, convention center, or just maybe you're doing like a parade film shoot down Main Street, something like that. So some of the key people that you want to, you know, not just be aware of, but actually make an effort to have a personal impression with would be, you know, first of all, the receptionist, right? Anywhere you go, know the receptionist, you know, make sure that you ingratiate yourself to that person, leave an impression, because that is the person who knows every single important person in the building. Okay. And some of those other people include things like, you know, the security guard. So when you run into the security guard, instead of just passing them in the hall or showing your ID or whatever, I think it's important to make a point to, you know, leave an impression on that person. If you're going to be there several days throughout the week or several days throughout a period of time, you know, always make it a point to say hi to them, something like that. Because if something weird is going down and they recognize you, well, people are going to help people they recognize, you know, usually as a priority. Parking attendant, for instance, that's a great person to know as well. And even outside of things like safety, you know, if like there's someone, you know, messing around your car, or a tow truck is coming, you know, to pick up a car and they mistake yours, and that parking attendant, if you were nice to him every day, maybe you brought him a coffee on your way in or something like that, you know, that's one more person who could be looking out for you, because you're not just another face in the crowd to them. You know, you make time to talk to them, make an impression.
Yeah, so Brian, the parking, you know, the way I consider it is, like, I always try to look for who's the first point of contact on property. You know, so if there was an incident, if there was an accident and you needed emergency services, you know, contact that the emergency service is probably going to run into. And it's either, you're absolutely right, it's either going to be a parking attendant usually, or security, or somebody like that. So, you know, when it's time for things to get crazy because an incident has happened, you know, you're going to want everybody to direct the emergency personnel to the appropriate place. So understanding who the first point of contact is when they get off property is important.
And knowing where those people are as well. You know, if there's an incident, an emergency, and, you know, I know the guy who runs the parking area, or I know the security gates, while that emergency is waiting on EMS response, I can either contact that person, or I can run out there because I know right where they're going to be and say, hey Bob, you know, we got an ambulance coming, this is what's going on. And then Bob, the security guard, is gonna because I've, spoken to them every day, I've said hi to them every day, maybe I brought them a muffin or something. That familiarity is going to help move that situation along faster and hopefully, eliminate some possibility of confusion and things like that as well.
Yeah, I think custodial is another good one as well, Brian, right? Like I know I've made quite a bit of mess in my day on job sites, whether it's spilling my soda or leaking oil from a motor or whatever the case might be, right? So rather than leave a mess there for somebody to have a safety issue later on, or having to station one of my riggers there until they run into somebody that might be able to help them, understanding who the custodial contacts would be another good one.
Right, and that's not just like, for our safety, knowing that person, or knowing the people that run custodial. I've been on plenty of job sites where, we're performing work above and there's, hazardous conditions below us or the potential for them. And if the custodial crew has no awareness of what you're doing or how it could impact them, they could put themselves in a hazardous situation.
Right.
So, and if you're up on a beam and custodial is coming through, or the housemen for the ballroom are coming through or something, and you're just yelling down at them, hey, get out of there, don't be there, stuff like that, that's not a great situation to be in. Maybe they, don't understand what you're trying to say and they'll keep walking through the area anyway. But, if you took some time, a second or two out of your day here and there, when you saw them, maybe try to make some kind of personal contact with them in a friendly way. When you're telling them, hey, look, there's something going on up here, we need you to stand out of the way. They're going to be a lot more receptive to that direction if you've established a rapport.
Yep. So basically, be nice to everybody because you never know.
Yeah.
Hey, that kind of applies to life in general. It's never
That's
that
right.
idea wherever you are. If you're a student in a school or, in a workplace, knowing the people that are in control of things, it's a great life lesson in general, not even just for the entertainment industry. So you talked about the houseman, the receptionist, security guard, parking attendant, custodial crew, and I don't know, did you touch on engineering?
Engineering, yeah. I was on a job at one point, and we knew the people in engineering, right? They were not part of the job, but we needed to be able to communicate with them, to have lights turned off and things like that, because we were doing work around some live circuits. And we locked ourselves onto the rooftop. So there was a door that locks behind you, and we weren't allowed to have keys to that door. They were like, you're not supposed to prop it open, but that's what we did basically to get in and out. And our little prop for the door failed and slid into the stairwell, and now we're locked out. So there's two really important people to know there, actually three. If you know who the receptionist is and you call them up and you're like, hey, this is Brian. Remember I'm the guy that brought you a coffee, or, you were showing me pictures of your nephew, or whatever it is, whatever personal interaction that you were able to develop there. And you say, hey, look, I'm locked up on my roof there. Well, that receptionist knows everybody in the building who has keys to that rooftop, right? The security guard, Bob, security guard. If you know how to contact him, or if you're shouting down at him from the rooftop and he recognizes you up there, guess what? He's going to be more motivated to try to help you. But yeah, engineering, they're the people who have the keys to everything. They know where all the breaker boxes are. They know where all of the technical and machinery type things are that can either prevent accidents or, mitigate the intensity of an incident should one happen.
That's great. What a list. Do you have any final comments to add to that, Nick?
No, I think he covered it all. Like I said, be nice to everybody.
I got one story. I got one little story real quick.
Go for it. We'll take a story before we start questions. Yeah.
Rigging in a ballroom, the houseman, we did mention the houseman one time, but the fact that we had a really good relationship with the houseman for that particular ballroom or that particular convention center, we ran out of padding to use for our wire rope that goes over the beam, our wear pads, what we called them. We ran out of that, and we weren't going to be able to get more for quite a while. So we literally could not hang any more points until we got that, which was holding everything up. But because our rigging crew chief at that time was really good friends with the houseman, and by good friends, I mean when the kitchen gave us extra food, we shared it with the houseman's crew. right? That's what I'm talking about, making friends, you know, little help here and there. And the houseman gave us a bunch of like older tablecloth material that we were able to fashion, you know, makeshift wear pads out of, at least for temporary use, and continue loading in the show. So that houseman and the relationship between him and the ring crew chief actually saved hours and hours of labor of waiting on that material, or what's worse, making the decision to move forward without that material, which could have created an unsafe situation.
Right.
So Brian, to those that aren't in the convention world, what is a houseman?
They're the people that set up the tables and chairs and all of that kind of stuff. Usually there's a contentious relationship with them, because when we're loading in, they're usually like, come on, hurry up and finish. We got to set up all these tables. You know, they have to do that like 20 times in a day sometimes. On load out, we're the ones pushing them out of the room. Get all the tables out of the way. We're trying. So, you know, naturally there's a conflict there, but if you go out of your way and are, you know, friendly and helpful, they can actually be allies instead of, you know, antagonists in our little scenarios.
Right. That's great. Awesome stuff. So let's go now to questions. Let's see what people are asking. I've been seeing the little button light up quite a bit. Okay.
Cool.
Yes. Someone is asking if the two of you would mind, in the Facebook forum, it's totally up to you, to share some of the brand names of some of your favorite products that you use in the industry. You know, it's totally up to you if you want to do that, but the request was made. All right.
I'll ask you if I can do that.
Yeah. And there was some good information. There's some good information shared here by a few people. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. Without an impact, does a helmet expire? Do people replace helmets every 10 years?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, well, the helmet that I have right here, the manufacturer of this helmet says 10 years. So even if it's brand new, 10 years. And here's one more thing I'd like to say about helmets, because, you know, I haven't said enough about helmets today. You know, it is the thing that protects the most important part of your body, right? Your brain. So I think it's pretty important. It deserves extra time. The thing about helmets is you also have to look at the manufacturer's instructions about stickers. So like this manufacturer, you're not allowed to put stickers on this helmet. And I've had people come here for rope access training and they want to wear their own helmet, but they come here and the helmet's covered in stickers, right? Stickers on top of stickers. And that's actually not allowed. You know, there's a variety of reasons. One of the biggest is, like, let's say my employer provided this helmet for me, right? Instead of me buying it on my own, and I have an accident and there's a crack in it. I'm like, oh, I don't want to get in trouble for busting the helmet. They're going to yell at me if they have to buy a new one. I'll just put a sticker over that. Then the next person uses it, something falls on their head, and, you know, the helmet didn't function. So that's one of many reasons why they don't allow stickers on those type of helmets.
So Brian, while you're on the inspection criteria, could you go a little bit more in depth on the inspection criteria? I guess maybe relating to metal versus textile for like harnesses in particular, because that's my
no more helmets.
I've had enough of helmets for one day. Let's go to
helmets for an hour. Inspection criteria for harnesses. You sure you don't want to do helmets though?
I mean, it's been fun, but let's move on from helmets.
Yeah. Well, like I said before, contrasting colored stitching.
Right.
Your D-rings. So these are, you know, going to be your primary anchorage attachment points between your anchorage and yourself. So you got to make sure that they're not deformed, worn down, corroded from rust or chemical exposure, things like that, and that they're not, you know, like there's not nicks and gouges anywhere in them, that sort of thing. So nowadays, a lot of these are made with aluminum, or they're going to be anodized. You know, like these are anodized, so there's a black coating on them that lasts a pretty good long time. So you got to make sure that all of your D-rings, your attachments and stuff are intact. Now this is the back D-ring of the harness, and that is going to be used solely for fall arrest. All right, typically limited to a 6-foot free fall and a system that limits the force in the body to no more than 1,800 pounds. That's an approximate. But you're not using this D-ring for anything but that, okay? Most harnesses nowadays also have a fall indicator, at least one. This one has one right here. So it might be difficult to see on camera, but if this harness were to experience a fall on that dorsal D-ring, that's going to be right back, dorsal fin on a shark, right on your back. If you experience a fall, that stitching right there will pop open, and then you'll know that harness was exposed to a fall in a fall arrest situation. The back of the harness will sometimes have a posterior D-ring that's right here, right? That's going to be right along the small of your back, your belt line, and that is not to be used for any sort of suspension or fall arrest. That is specifically limited to what we call travel restraint, right? That's a system where it's basically like a leash, but you're not able to get into a position where you would fall, right? It stops you before you get to the edge of something.
Mm-hmm.
And then beyond that, we want to make sure that the other D-rings are intact. So like I said, this is a rope access harness, but it's also used for fall protection. This is our sternal D-ring. So it's going to live right here near our sternum bone. And we want to make sure that's intact as well, and that the webbing that runs through it hasn't been worn down, damaged, or anything like that. Now, I will admit I do have a bad habit. So, trying to quit. So wish me some strength there. But one of the things that I don't like to see is when people smoke in their harness, even if it's your own personal harness, because as a smoker, I've often seen little burns on my shirt and stuff like that. So, you're on a job, you go out for a smoke break or whatever, you're in your harness, you don't want to take the whole thing off and on again, and then you end up getting a little burn somewhere in a critical spot. And you go back up, you experience a fall, or maybe you're working in suspension, your harness is now compromised, and you most likely, if you didn't want to take the time to take the harness off, you most likely didn't perform any kind of, intermediate inspection between then. So
Brian, does that harness have a tag? Does that harness have a tag where you can write some identifiable marks to it? That relates to one of the questions in our comment box here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. There on the tail of this one is a little Velcro pack right there. So you can open that up. And in there is gonna, depending on the manufacturer, will be a variety of different information. But this one's got basically a little book to it. So it's gonna tell you what classifications it meets or what standards. It's going to have some information right there. You can put your name or, like a unique identifier on it.
What if I write my name in Sharpie on the webbing?
Yeah.
Well, that again is going to be depending on the manufacturer. I have heard that some manufacturers will allow that, but I don't know who they are specifically, because I've never asked the question to a manufacturer, because I'm not going to write stuff on the harness.
Yeah.
But yeah, you should never be writing or marking with paint or any other sort of, implement anything on the webbing or stitching that's structural. There might be some components of the harness that are not life safety related that you want to mark, but you need to get detailed guidance from the manufacturer on whether you can do that or not.
Absolutely. And I see somebody from the comments said to destroy the harness once you decide to retire it so it doesn't get back in circulation. Very good tip, very good point.
Yep.
When it's time to retire anything that's PPE or safety critical related, you definitely want to destroy it so it doesn't get back into circulation.
Yeah, someone's asking about suggestions about serving a working at height workplace that hasn't been utilized for an extended time, like during quarantine. What would your suggestion?
All those systems have to be inspected on a regular basis. So before the next use, no matter how much time has gone by, an inspection has to occur by a competent person. And then depending on the manufacturer and the region that you're in, a thorough examination that includes documentation. So there's going to be electronic or hard copy documentation that an inspection occurred, who did it, what they inspected, all of that information. Generally speaking, that's going to be once a year. And in California, UK, and EU, that's going to be a minimum of every 6 months. The California rules and OSHA regulation for California specifically. And then in the EU, that falls under like LOLR and the EN standards and stuff like that.
Okay, perfect.
But yeah, I wouldn't walk into a venue and just start using stuff. I would be asking, okay, so, where's the inspection record before we set up, or, look at the devices you're going to use, make sure, because there should be a tag there that says when it was inspected.
Okay. Do you have a preferred method for transporting and protecting your PPE? They made the comment that many use Pelican cases, but again, without promoting a company or product. So.
Yeah, I think you got to really look at, the storage of that product. Pelican cases are great. They're very robust and durable, but if the Pelican case is going to live outside in the heat and the elements, then it's not necessarily about transport, about where it lives when it's not being transported. So Pelican cases are great, but you could easily get away with a backpack or whatnot as long as you're transporting it properly, right?
Okay. Okay.
I have a fixation with containers, and on one of my trips, I saw a store, and the name of the store was the Container Store, and I was like,
love the Container Store.
But when it comes to that, I don't just have a container for my PPE. I literally have like bags within that container and pouches within that container, some of them even empty. So like if I'm like, all right, I need to cherry pick certain things out of here, I have little bags already in there. I'm like, all right, I know exactly what I can put in here if I need for that situation. So adaptability is really good. So a hard case, like you guys were talking about, is a great thing to have as an overall thing, but I would also have something within that I can customize for quick deployment and things like that.
Yeah, good point.
Excellent. I love that. Someone's asking a question about proper disposal of PPE equipment once it's past its prime.
So we touched on destroying it. If for harnesses, I'd cut all the straps. Helmets, maybe cut all the interior part that fits around your head real good. Brian, any other tips for helmets on destroying?
Well, for any PPE or rigging hardware that is that's going to be retired, the manufacturer wants you to make sure that it's not, able to be used in that way anymore. My personal preference is that you pack it up and send it to me here at Rockleditz, and I can use it for classes. And if you send me something really cool, I might reach out to you with like, a discount on training or something. So that would be my preference, because I'm not going to break the stuff I have here. So send me your broken stuff. But yeah, you got to destroy it. You got to get rid of it. You can get tape that says quarantine on it, like little pieces of tape. And that's what a lot of the other training facilities I've been to use when they want to be able to use that destroyer, that bad equipment as an example in class. They'll, cut a key piece of it, like the attachment point, or they'll wrap it in this quarantine tape so that, people know not to use it. Another place I used to work, we would paint it red, but then another department started painting their good stuff red, and then that, was just silly.
Yeah. Okay, just a couple more questions, and they're real quick ones. Steel or composite safety toe boots?
I think it kind of depends on what your safety team or what your program administrator would consider to be an adequate safety toe. From a comfort perspective, I don't know if I notice a difference. Do you, Brian?
I like composite. Also because, like I said before, I like to wear insulated shoes. And if you have steel or aluminum, you're not going to get an insulated shoe with steel or aluminum. So I like composite. But as long as it has the safety rating to it, the material doesn't matter. But composite will be lighter than steel. Aluminum is pretty light too. But one of the arguments that used to go around about steel toe shoes is that oh, you're not safer wearing a steel toe shoe because if something crushes it, it's going to cut your toes off. Anything that's able to crush that steel toe shoe with enough force to cut your toes off, guess what? It was going to go through your toes too. Like you wouldn't have any toes. So it's better to have it. I'd rather have a moderately heavy object fall on my feet and be protected from that with a steel toe shoe. Because in a if you have like a house fall on your foot, nothing's going to protect you against that.
One comment came in which I thought was great. Some manufacturers request that you send them the PPE following an incident so they can evaluate and use it to improve their products.
Right.
So yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank you for sending that in.
But I guess there's a difference between incidents and just general wear and tear, right? So
yeah, exactly.
wear and tear, cut it and just dispose of it. But yeah, if there was a fall or an incident or something like that, then absolutely, the additional steps should be taken.
Okay, we have to wrap up now. So what I'd like to do, any remaining questions, I will send them to the two of you and you can answer directly, or you can throw it into the CM Riggers Forum. So again, if you haven't considered joining, that's a really great thing to look at. Let me just do something quick. I'm going to send you guys a chat also, a message. So one thing I want to share, because we've been getting a lot of requests from so many people. But Brian, can you just talk a little bit about the brand new updated online CMET class that we just launched on our brand new LMS, our learning management platform? Because we get a lot of requests. So I wanted to have you give a little update. And I just sent a link to the class in the chat.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, we just updated our online training. So for several years, we've had a kind of a basic, information and maintenance training online for the Lodestar. And so a lot has changed with the Lodestar, a lot has changed with standards and things like that over the last several years. So we wanted to update that training. So we not only updated it, we also expanded it to include the ProStar. So before it was just Lodestars. Now it's Lodestars and ProStars. It covers the Classic, the next generation Lodestar, and the ProStar. We break it down with an interactive e-learning that goes through every component of those hoists with a side-by-side comparison, so you can kind of see what the differences are. We go into a lot of the inspection, a lot of the retirement criteria for certain parts, the lubrication recommendations, safe handling and operation. So it's a pretty comprehensive class. For the in-person classes we do here at our Rockleditz Training Center, I would say if you don't have a lot of experience with hoists already, it's the perfect starting point. So you do that online class. When you come here and you do our more advanced hands-on training, you've already got a great foundation. So you're not spending a lot of that time trying to go, what is that? What is a clutch? Or what is regenerative braking? Things like that. So I think it'll really help with as a primer. And it's just one of many e-learning opportunities that we're going to be rolling out this year for people. So
excellent.
Looking
Yeah,
forward to
thank
that.
you. Just wanted to update you all on that. So with that, we just want to say thanks for coming. Everybody we know is busy and has a lot on their plates, but the fact you took an hour of your day to come join us means a lot. As I said, we're going to be sending out early next week links to every session from this week, so for each day, so that you can find videos, things that are referenced, especially previously in the week. We had a few checklists and things that we provided. So look for that, and just hope everybody has a great weekend. Thanks again for your support and coming today. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.